People mocked the girl for marrying a disabled man, never knowing he was a secret billionaire who loved her fiercely. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain streaked down the glass walls of the downtown Seattle Law Center, the sound tapping against the windows like a restless heartbeat. Inside a quiet conference room, fluorescent lights hummed softly over a polished mahogany table where Ava Thompson sat frozen in disbelief. Her fingers curled around the edges of the contract placed neatly in front of her. The paper felt heavier than any document she had ever touched. Across from her sat Ethan Hale, the man everyone believed to be a reclusive, disabled philanthropist, confined to a wheelchair after a devastating car crash. His posture was straight, expression unreadable, eyes cool as winter steel. Most people saw the chair before they saw him, but Ava saw something else, an unsettling stillness, a power he never raised his voice to show. "Marry me," Ethan said, his tone flat and certain, as if he were asking her to pass the salt. "Think of it as a contract." Ava's breath caught. She replayed the words again, wondering if exhaustion from working double shifts at the diner was making her hallucinate. "I am sorry." "What?" Ethan tapped the folder with a single finger. The gesture was controlled, deliberate, the way a man makes moves only after calculating every possible outcome. "You need financial stability. I need a spouse on paper. It is a partnership, no romance. No obligations outside public appearances. You will be compensated for your time." She looked down at the contract again, her vision blurring at the list of clauses. Monthly stipends, debt clearance, full medical insurance for her mother, a guaranteed apartment close to the hospital. Everything she had spent years scraping for was printed in crisp black ink. Ava swallowed hard. "Why me? You do not even know me." Ethan's jaw flexed. "I know enough. You work hard. You keep your promises. You do not leak private information. And you are desperate, but not dishonest. That combination is extremely rare." His eyes locked onto hers with unsettling precision. "Which is exactly why I chose you." The words stung, even though they were factual. She was desperate. Her mother's medical bills had nearly doubled that month. Her landlord had issued a final warning. She had 2 jobs, no sleep, and no way out. But marrying a man she barely knew? A man the world mocked because they thought he was powerless? A man who sat across from her like he was interviewing a business partner, not proposing a marriage? Her pulse raced as rain echoed harder against the window, like the city itself urging her to decide. Ethan slid a pen toward her. Its silver body gleamed under the lights, elegant and cold. "Take 24 hours. After that, the offer expires." Ava stared at the pen, then at the contract, then at the man who somehow seemed both distant and entirely present. Something in his gaze felt like a locked door, and she could not tell whether stepping through would save her or break her. But one thing was certain. Nothing about this arrangement, this contract, would stay simple for long. The rain had stopped by the time Ava stepped out of the law center that night, but the cold still clung to her like a second skin. The streets glimmered with reflections from the city lights, and every passing car sent ripples across the puddles at her feet. She held the contract against her chest, unable to shake the weight of it. The ink felt like it had already seeped beneath her skin. By the time she reached her apartment, the hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and microwaved noodles. The building was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed on your ears and made every breath sound too loud. She unlocked the door, flicked on the dim light, and saw exactly what she had been trying to outrun all evening. A stack of unpaid bills sat on the kitchen counter. The final eviction notice was taped crookedly to the fridge, and her mother's latest medical statement lay open on the table, the total amount circled in red pen by a weary nurse. Ava sank into the nearest chair, her hands trembling as she spread the documents out. The numbers were impossible. She had known things were bad, but seeing the total in front of her felt like a punch she could not brace for. Her phone buzzed with a notification, a reminder for her next shift at the diner. Another shift she had to work without sleep. Another shift that would not come close to touching the medical debt piling up like a drowning tide. She closed her eyes, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Ethan Hale's voice returned to her mind, sharp and steady. I know enough. You work hard. You keep your promises. You are desperate, but not dishonest. She had hated how accurate it was. She hated even more how practical he sounded. Her mother coughed from the bedroom, a weak, strained sound. Ava jumped to her feet and hurried over. Her mother lay in a worn hospital bed they had rented last year, the blue blanket tucked under her chin. Sweetheart, her mother whispered, forcing a tired smile. You are home late again. Ava brushed a strand of hair away from her mother's forehead. I am fine. Work was just busy. Her mother's hand found hers. You cannot keep doing this. You are burning yourself out. Ava swallowed the ache in her throat. I can manage. Her mother squeezed her hand, barely strong enough to hold it. You deserve a life that does not hurt. The words cut deeper than any bill on the counter. Ava blinked away the sting in her eyes, kissed her mother's forehead, and tucked the blanket closer. When her mother fell asleep, Ava stepped outside to the living room and opened the contract again. The pages whispered as she turned them. The terms were clear. Ethan Hale was not asking for her affection, her devotion, or her heart. He wanted a spouse on paper, a shield, a partner in public appearances, a silent guard protecting his corporate position from a board that wanted to control him. In return, he would save her mother's life. A cold truth settled over her. Her life had already stopped being her own the day her mother fell sick. Everything since then had been a negotiation between survival and exhaustion. The contract was not love, it was not romance. It was a door she could walk through or let slam shut. Her phone vibrated again, this time a message from an unknown number. One line only. This is Ethan Hale. I expect your decision by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Ava felt her heartbeat stumble. He had not used pleasantries. He had not tried to convince her. He had simply laid a stopwatch at her feet. She looked at the bills again. She looked at the bedroom door where her mother slept, and she realized something she had been avoiding all night. Saying no might cost her everything she was fighting to save. Saying yes might cost her everything else. But morning was coming, whether she wanted it to or not. Morning arrived with a pale gray sky hanging low over Seattle, and Ava stood at the bus stop with the contract tucked neatly inside her bag. She had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, her mother's weakened voice echoed through her thoughts, mixing with Ethan Hale's unemotional offer. By dawn, her decision was no longer a decision at all. It was survival. The bus rumbled down the street and hissed to a stop. Ava climbed aboard, gripping the metal pole as the city blurred by in streaks of muted color. Office workers filed in and out at each stop, but she barely noticed them. Her mind replayed the weight of the night before, the bills, her mother's labored breathing, and the message Ethan had sent. 10 o'clock, no extensions, no leniency. By the time she reached downtown, her palms were damp with nerves. The towering glass building of Hale Industries loomed above her, reflecting the gray sky like a silent warning. She took a deep breath, pushed through the revolving doors, and stepped onto the polished marble floor. Everything around her felt expensive, sterile, and far too bright. The receptionist, impeccably dressed, glanced up from her monitor. Good morning. Do you have an appointment? Yes, Ava said quietly. Ava Thompson, Mr. Hale is expecting me. The receptionist's expression shifted, softening with recognition. Executive floor. Top level. The elevator on the right. A moment later, Ava stood alone inside the elevator as it ascended smoothly. Her reflection in the metal paneling looked pale and nervous, her hand clenching the bag at her side. When the doors finally opened, a woman in a navy pencil skirt was waiting for her. This way, Miss Thompson. Mr. Hale is ready for you. The hallway was silent except for the soft click of the woman's heels. They stopped in front of a set of double doors. She knocked once and then opened them. Ava stepped inside. Ethan Hale sat behind a wide glass desk, a wall of floor-to-ceiling windows behind him framing the skyline. The morning light cast a silver glow across his dark suit. He did not look up immediately. His fingers moved across a sleek tablet, scrolling through documents with the precision of someone accustomed to absolute control. Finally, he lifted his gaze. "You are on time." "Good," Ava swallowed. "I have made my decision." His eyes flicked to the folder she held. "You signed it." "Yes," she said, her voice steady even though her legs were not. "I signed both copies." Ethan extended his hand. Ava placed the folder in his palm. He opened it, scanned the signatures, and gave a single nod. "Then, we proceed." He turned to the side and pressed a button on his desk. A moment later, his assistant entered with a small rolling tray. On top lay 2 envelopes, a set of keys, and a black card embossed with the Hale Industries crest. Ethan gestured toward them. "This is your monthly stipend, the apartment key, and the access card for private transportation. You will receive further instructions before each public appearance." Ava stared at the items, feeling the strange distance between the gravity of this arrangement and the cold formality of the moment. Ethan continued, "There will be a ceremony this evening. It will be private and conducted at the county courthouse. Afterward, you will relocate to the Hale estate." Ava blinked. "This evening? Everything is happening very quickly. I do not delay once an agreement is set," Ethan replied. His voice lacked warmth, but not cruelty. It was simply matter of fact. "The arrangement begins today." She felt the room tilt for a moment. "Do you want me to go home first?" "I need to gather my things." "That has already been handled," Ethan said. "My staff will transport your belongings to the estate. You will find them in your assigned suite tonight." Ava froze. "You had people go to my apartment?" "Efficiency is necessary," Ethan replied calmly. "There is no need for you to worry about logistics. You have enough burdens." His words startled her. They were delivered without sentiment, but something in them felt almost protective. Ava took a slow breath, grounding herself. "Then, what happens now?" Ethan closed the folder, placed it aside, and met her eyes with a controlled certainty. "Now, Miss Thompson, your life changes, and so does mine." The hours that followed moved with a pace Ava could barely keep up with. One moment she was standing in Ethan Hale's office, the contract officially binding her to a man she hardly knew, and the next she was being ushered into a quiet preparation suite inside the building. A tailor waited with neatly arranged outfits. A makeup artist organized soft palettes of colors, and a stylist sorted through accessories with clinical precision. Ava stood near the window, watching the drizzle return to the Seattle sky in a thin silver veil. Everything felt unreal, as if she were walking through a life that belonged to someone else. The tailor measured her quickly and returned with a fitted cream dress that felt elegant and understated. It was not extravagant, but it was certainly far beyond anything Ava had owned before. "Mr. Hale requested simplicity," the stylist said as she adjusted the hem. "He prefers a clean look for the courthouse setting." Ava nodded quietly. She did not know what Ethan preferred. She barely knew anything about him beyond what the world whispered. A disabled billionaire. A man who moved through life with a guarded silence. A man who negotiated marriage like a business deal. A man she was hours away from marrying. When she finally stepped out of the preparation suite, Ethan was waiting near the private exit. He wore a charcoal suit that framed his shoulders sharply, and the wheelchair he sat in gleamed under the corridor lighting. His expression did not shift when he saw her, but his eyes lingered for a beat longer than usual. "You look appropriate," he said. It was not a compliment, but it was not cold either. More like an evaluation he approved of. "Thank you," Ava replied softly. The ride to the courthouse was silent except for the sound of rain tapping against the windows. The city blurred by, and Ava focused on her hands in her lap, wondering if they would shake during the ceremony. Ethan sat beside her, posture impeccable, eyes fixed on the window. There was an air of calculation around him, as if he were mentally arranging the next 10 steps, while the present moment barely required his attention. The courthouse was nearly empty when they arrived. A judge waited inside a small chamber, flipping through documents while Ethan's attorney finalized the paperwork. Ava stood beside Ethan, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. The judge cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" Ethan's voice was steady. "Yes." They stood side by side as the judge read the vows in a neutral tone. It sounded more like a scripted procedure than a declaration of union, But Ava told herself she did not need romance. She needed her mother safe. She needed stability. She needed a chance. Ava Thompson, the judge said, shifting his gaze to her. Do you take Ethan Hale to be your lawfully wedded husband? Her throat tightened, but she nodded. I do. And Ethan Hale, do you take Ava Thompson to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do, he answered without hesitation. The judge signed the certificate. Ethan's attorney collected the documents, and just like that, it was done. Ava stood still for a moment, absorbing the impact of the words. She was married. A stranger's last name was now hers. A stranger's life had become the axis of her own. Ethan extended his hand toward her. His expression held no warmth, no affection, just a calm acknowledgement of the arrangement they had sealed. Congratulations, he said. From this moment forward, you are Ava Hale. Her fingers brushed his as she placed her hand in his palm. His grip was firm and grounding, not tender, but strangely reassuring. Thank you, she murmured. Let us go, Ethan said. The car is waiting. Outside, rain began to fall harder, streaking the courthouse steps with shimmering lines. As they moved toward the waiting vehicle, Ava glanced back at the dimly lit building. She walked in as Ava Thompson. She walked out as Ava Hale. And nothing about her life would ever be the same again. The car ride to the Hale estate felt longer than it should have, even though traffic was light and the city had settled into a soft evening hush. Ava sat beside Ethan in the spacious back seat, the dim interior lights casting warm shadows across the leather upholstery. She held her hands tightly in her lap, aware of the new ring on her finger and the quiet weight it carried. Ethan remained silent for most of the drive, occasionally glancing at his tablet as if shifting his focus from business to marriage required no emotional adjustment. Outside, the city lights faded into winding roads lined with towering evergreens. The deeper they drove, the more isolated the surroundings became, until the glow of Seattle disappeared entirely behind them. When the gates finally appeared, tall and made of wrought iron, they opened with a smooth, mechanical hum. The Hale estate rose beyond them like something pulled from another world. White stone columns framed the entrance, lanterns illuminated the long driveway, and manicured hedges shaped the path all the way to the front steps. The rain had stopped, leaving everything glistening under the soft exterior lights. Ava swallowed. She had grown up in cramped apartments, small rented rooms, and one-bedroom rentals near hospital corridors. The estate felt unreal, almost intimidating in its vastness. The chauffeur stepped out to open the door. Ava followed Ethan as he guided his wheelchair onto the stone pathway with practiced ease. A housekeeper waited at the front door, her posture straight and respectful. Welcome home, Mr. Hale. Mrs. Hale. Her tone was polite, calm, and unshaken by the title she had just used. Ava's heart jumped. Mrs. Hale. She was still not used to hearing those words. Ethan nodded at the housekeeper. Please show her to the guest suite. Of course. Ava looked at Ethan, unsure whether to say something or simply follow. Before she could decide, he spoke. We maintain separate quarters, he said in an even tone. It is standard for arrangements like ours. Your suite is down the hall to the right. Mine is on the opposite side. Ava nodded, grateful for the clarity. Thank you. There will be an early appointment tomorrow, Ethan continued. I will brief you in the morning. For tonight, rest. You will find everything you need in the suite. The housekeeper began walking, and Ava followed. As they moved down the long hallway, her footsteps felt swallowed by the thick carpets. Portraits lined the walls, each painted with meticulous detail, each figure stern and impossibly composed. The legacy of the Hale family watched her silently with expressions that felt like stone. The guest suite door opened to a room larger than her entire apartment. Soft cream walls, tall windows draped with heavy fabric, a king-size bed with crisp linens, and a sitting area that looked untouched. A suitcase rested by the dresser, her clothes neatly folded inside, exactly as Ethan's staff had promised. Dinner will be at 7 unless Mr. Hale states otherwise, the housekeeper said. If you need anything, please press the button beside the bed. Someone will come immediately. Thank you, Ava replied. When the housekeeper left, the room fell into a quiet stillness. Ava walked toward the window and pulled the curtain slightly aside. The estate grounds stretched out in every direction, gardens trimmed with perfect symmetry, fountains reflecting the moonlight, and pathways glowing faintly under hidden lights. Ava exhaled slowly. This was her new life. A life carved from marble and rules. A life she had agreed to in exchange for survival. She sat on the edge of the bed and let her shoulders slump. Her body ached from tension she had been carrying since dawn. She touched the ring on her finger again, feeling the smooth surface beneath her thumb. She was married now. Married to Ethan Hale, a man who spoke like every sentence had already been filtered through logic and strategy. A man whose presence commanded an entire corporation and an estate that looked like a small kingdom. A man who offered marriage not because he felt anything for her, but because she fit a requirement, a stranger, a husband, a contract wearing a suit. A knock sounded on her door. Ava straightened, heart leaping. "Mrs. Hale," a voice said from outside. "Dinner will be served in 15 minutes. Mr. Hale requests your presence." Ava closed her eyes for a moment, steadying her breath. This was no longer a negotiation. This was her reality. And the part of the arrangement no one warned her about was already beginning to settle in. She stood, smoothed her dress, and prepared to step into the next chapter of a life she had not chosen, yet could not walk away from. Dinner at the Hale estate felt more like a formal hearing than a meal. Ava walked into the dining room with careful steps, unsure how loud her heels sounded against the polished floor. The long table stretched across the room, adorned with flickering candles and silverware arranged with flawless precision. Ethan sat near the head of the table, his posture straight, his expression as composed as ever. A butler pulled out a chair for her. Ava murmured a thank you and sat down, folding her hands in her lap. The silence felt heavy, almost ceremonial, until Ethan looked up from the tablet resting beside his plate. "You arrived on time," he said. "I did not want to be late," she replied. "Punctuality is important in this arrangement," Ethan said. His tone was not cold, only factual. "Public perception depends on consistency." Ava nodded. "I understand." Dinner was served in quiet courses. The food was delicious, plated with the kind of elegance she had only seen on cooking shows, but she could barely taste anything. Her mind kept drifting back to her mother, wondering whether she was resting easily at the hospital tonight. Ethan cut his food with precise movements, every gesture efficient and controlled. It was clear he was a man who had built his life on order. After several minutes, he set his utensils down. "Tomorrow you will accompany me to a board luncheon." Ava blinked. "A board luncheon?" "Yes, it is essential for them to see us together as a married couple. They will assess you, not verbally, but through their mannerisms and observations. Appear confident. Answer only when addressed. I will handle the majority of the conversation." Ava swallowed. "What exactly will they be assessing?" "Whether our marriage appears legitimate," Ethan said without hesitation. "And whether you fit the image they expect." Ava's chest tightened. "I will try my best." "Trying is not the concern," Ethan replied. "Composure is." His words struck something inside her. Not cruelty, not kindness, something in between. A subtle acknowledgement that he knew the pressure he was placing on her, even if he refused to soften it. When dinner ended, Ethan glanced toward the door where the butler waited. "I will have my assistant send you the schedule by morning." Ava stood slowly. "Good night, Ethan." He paused, as if the use of his first name caught him off guard, then gave a brief nod. "Good night, Ava." She left the dining room with a mix of uncertainty and relief. The hallway back to her suite felt longer than earlier, the mansion's quiet more pronounced now that evening had settled. When she reached her room, she eased the door shut behind her and leaned against it, letting out a breath she had been holding for hours. Tonight had been a window into her new reality. Formal dinners, scheduled appearances, measured conversations, a husband who treated her like a strategic partner instead of a companion, a life scripted by necessity rather than affection. She walked toward the vanity, where someone had placed a folder with her name embossed on the cover. Inside was the schedule for the next day. Each hour had a purpose. Each task was written with the same decisiveness Ethan used in all his conversations. Ava sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the papers until the words blurred. She reminded herself why she was here. Her mother needed treatment. Rent needed to be paid. Survival had led her into this arrangement. But now that she was here, living inside the quiet grandeur of the Hale estate, she realized something else. Loneliness followed her just as easily into luxury as it had followed her through poverty. She looked toward the window, watching the soft glow of garden lights ripple across the glass. She wondered where Ethan was now, probably working, planning, or reviewing tomorrow's agenda with the same focus he used for everything else. And she could not help but wonder one more thing. In a house this enormous, full of wealth and silence, how long had Ethan been alone before she arrived? The thought stayed with her as she prepared for bed, lingering like a question neither of them was ready to answer. Morning sunlight filtered through the heavy curtains of Ava's suite, painting faint golden lines across the carpet. She woke earlier than expected, her nerves already stirring beneath her skin. Today was the luncheon. Today she would meet the board members who controlled the company her new husband commanded with an iron will and a silent presence. A soft knock echoed through the room. "Mrs. Hale, breakfast is ready in the dining room," a housekeeper called gently. Ava dressed quickly, choosing a simple blouse and tailored slacks from the wardrobe that had been stocked with new clothing overnight. Everything fit perfectly, which meant Ethan's staff had known her measurements before she even arrived. She tried not to think too hard about that. When she stepped into the dining room, Ethan was already there, dressed in a tailored steel gray suit. His wheelchair was positioned at the end of the table. He glanced up from the tablet he was reviewing. "You are early," he noted. "I wanted to make sure I was prepared," Ava said quietly. Ethan set the tablet aside with deliberate care. "You will be introduced as my wife, and they will observe everything. Your posture, your tone, your reactions. Do not allow them to provoke you." Ava hesitated. "Will they try to?" "They will," Ethan replied calmly. "Some will be subtle, some will be cruel. They believe my marriage weakens my position. They will want to confirm that." A chill traced down Ava's spine. "I understand." Breakfast passed quickly, and soon they were in the car again, heading into the heart of downtown Seattle. The Hale Industries headquarters towered above the skyline, sleek and modern. As Ethan's private elevator carried them to the boardroom level, Ava's pulse thrummed loudly in her ears. When the doors opened, a row of executives turned to greet them. Their expressions were polite, tight, and calculating. Ethan's assistant stepped aside, allowing them to enter. "Ladies and gentlemen," the assistant announced, "Mr. Hale and Mrs. Hale." For a brief moment, the room fell silent. Then several board members exchanged glances that carried more weight than words. Ava felt their gaze sweep over her from head to toe, measuring everything she was and everything she was not. Ethan guided his wheelchair toward the head of the long conference table. "Thank you all for coming," he said, voice steady and controlled. Ava sat beside him, her back straight, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She felt every eye on her. "Mrs. Hale," one of the older board members said with a forced smile, "it is quite a surprise to see you here. We had no idea Mr. Hale was planning such swift changes." Ava kept her expression neutral. Life does not always provide warnings. A few whispers rippled down the table, surprised by her composed response. Ethan's jaw shifted slightly, almost in approval, though his eyes remained fixed ahead. Another board member leaned forward. "And do tell us, Mrs. Hale, how long have you and Mr. Hale known each other?" Ava felt the trap in the question. She answered carefully, "Long enough to make a commitment based on trust, respect, and shared purpose." The man raised an eyebrow, unamused by the lack of scandal in her response. Throughout the luncheon, the board's remarks grew sharper, each one designed to test her composure. At one point, a woman with diamond earrings leaned back in her chair. "It must be quite an adjustment for someone." "From your background," she said, the implication unmistakable. Ava felt heat rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "Every challenge is an adjustment. I am learning, and I am committed to supporting my husband." The room went quiet. Ethan finally looked at her, his expression unreadable but unmistakably altered. When the luncheon ended, Ethan guided his chair toward the elevator without saying a word. Ava followed, her heart pounding. They entered the private elevator, the doors sliding shut behind them. Only then did Ethan speak. His voice was low, steady, and different from before. "You handled them better than expected." Ava exhaled slowly. I just told the truth. Ethan turned his gaze toward her. They tried to break you. They did not succeed. For the first time since their arrangement began, something unguarded flickered in his eyes, something like quiet respect. Ava held his gaze, unsure what to say. But one thing was certain. The board had tried to test her. And instead, they had revealed something Ethan had not anticipated. His new wife was stronger than they expected, stronger than even Ethan had expected. The rest of the afternoon moved quietly, but an unmistakable shift lingered between Ava and Ethan. It was not warm, not intimate, but something had softened. The edges were no longer as sharp. Ethan observed her differently now, less like a variable in a complex strategy and more like a person he had underestimated. By early evening, they returned to the Hale estate. The sunset cast long amber streaks across the stone walls, and the fountain in the courtyard glimmered under the fading light. Ava stepped out of the car and felt the cool air brush against her skin. She expected to retreat to her suite as usual, but Ethan stopped her with a single sentence. "Walk with me," he said. Ava blinked, surprised. Of course. Ethan guided his wheelchair down a path lined with trimmed hedges and small lanterns that flickered like quiet fireflies. They walked in silence at first, the garden glowing softly as the sky darkened. Ethan's face remained composed, but his voice carried a different weight when he finally spoke. "I reviewed the board's feedback," he said. "Several of them believe our marriage is stable." Ava exhaled a slow breath. "Is that good?" "It is necessary," Ethan replied. "Their confidence determines the future of this company. Today you helped solidify that." Ava hesitated before she asked, "Did you doubt that I could?" Ethan paused. His wheelchair came to a soft stop beside the fountain. The water rippled under the garden lights, reflecting small, glowing waves across his features. "I did not know what you were capable of," he admitted. "But today, you showed strength I did not anticipate." Ava looked down, unsure what to do with the unexpected sincerity. "I just wanted to represent you well." "You represented yourself well," Ethan corrected. That is what they noticed. A silence settled between them, gentle, almost peaceful. Ethan turned his gaze toward the fountain again. For the first time, his voice lowered to something almost human. "People often mistake my chair for weakness," he said, "and they assume anyone beside me must be beneath them." Ava's breath caught. She had seen the cruelty in the boardroom, the subtle looks, the harsh undertones, but hearing Ethan acknowledge it aloud changed something inside her. "And they assume you cannot fight back," Ava said softly. Ethan's eyes lifted to hers. "I choose my battles. Today, you chose one for me." A warmth spread through Ava's chest. Her entire life had been survival, scraping by, fighting battles she did not ask for. She had never imagined she would stand up for someone like Ethan Hale, a man the world viewed through a distorted lens of power and limitation. A light breeze stirred the air. Ethan finally turned the wheelchair toward her, the glow from the fountain casting a soft halo behind him. "Our arrangement requires composure," he said. "Stability, public unity." Ava nodded. "I understand. But," he continued, "there is something else I want to be clear about." Ava felt her pulse quicken. "What is it?" Ethan studied her for a long moment, something unspoken passing through his expression. "You were never chosen because you were desperate," he said. "You were chosen because you are someone who does not break easily." Ava's throat tightened. For the first time since she signed the contract, she felt seen not as a necessity, not as a placeholder, but as a person. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan gave a faint nod, almost like a gesture of acknowledgement rather than approval. "This marriage began as a strategic decision. It still is, but I will ensure you are treated with respect, not because the contract requires it, but because you have earned it." Ava felt the weight of those words settle deep inside her. She had walked into this arrangement, expecting only survival. She had never expected dignity. "Ethan," she said quietly, "I will do my best to support you, not because the contract demands it, but because you deserve someone in your corner too." For the first time, Ethan's expression shifted barely, but enough to show something like gratitude. The evening breeze drifted between them, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from the garden beds. Ethan turned his chair toward the path leading back to the estate. "Come," he said. There is much to prepare for tomorrow. Ava walked beside him, her steps steady. And though the marriage had begun as a contract inked in practicality, something unspoken had taken root between them, something neither had planned for. Not love, not yet, but the very first spark of something real. The following week unfolded with a rhythm Ava had never experienced before. Meetings, public appearances, quiet dinners, and long stretches of silence inside the mansion became their new normal. Yet beneath that controlled routine, something subtle continued to grow. Ethan was still reserved, still guarded, but Ava began to notice the moments where his composure softened, a glance that lingered, a question asked with genuine curiosity, a tone that carried warmth instead of distance. On Friday morning, Ethan informed her that they would attend a small charity event hosted by the Hale Foundation. It was designed to showcase unity and stability within the Hale family. Ava dressed carefully, choosing a fitted navy dress that felt dignified without being extravagant. As she walked down the staircase, she found Ethan waiting at the base, his eyes lifting to meet hers. "You look appropriate," he said, the same phrase he had spoken countless times, but this time his voice carried a quieter undertone. "Thank you," Ava replied. The drive to the event was calm. When they arrived, the venue was buzzing with photographers and donors. As soon as they stepped inside, a few reporters turned toward them. Ava felt her breath catch, but Ethan leaned slightly closer, his voice low. "Remember what I told you. Composure." She nodded. "I will." They moved through the room together, and for the first time, Ethan's hand brushed hers in a subtle gesture of guidance. It was not scripted. It was not part of the contract. It was simply human. But the calm did not last. As they approached the center of the hall, a voice cut through the noise, sharp, familiar, calculated. "Ethan, I see your new wife made it after all." A man stepped forward. Marcus Reddington, a former colleague of Ethan's, known for his ruthless corporate ambition. His gaze swept over Ava with thinly veiled contempt. Ava felt the sting of the scrutiny immediately. "I must say," Marcus continued with a smirk, "I expected someone a bit more seasoned. Are you sure she understands what she signed up for? This family requires a certain level of sophistication." A few guests nearby exchanged uneasy glances. Ava felt her chest tighten, but before she could respond, Ethan's voice answered for her. "That is enough," Ethan said firmly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Just an observation." Ethan maneuvered his wheelchair closer, his expression sharp and unwavering. "Ava is my wife. She represents this family with integrity and strength. If you cannot offer respect, then you do not belong here." A hush fell around them. Marcus' smirk faded, replaced by surprise. He opened his mouth to speak, but Ethan turned his chair away, signaling the end of the discussion. Ava followed, her heart pounding. When they reached a quieter corner of the hall, Ethan looked up at her. There was no coldness in his expression, only sincerity. "What he said was unacceptable," Ethan said. "You deserve to be defended." Ava breathed in slowly. "Thank you. You should never have to justify your worth to people like him," Ethan continued. "Not while you stand beside me." A warmth bloomed in Ava's chest, gentle and steady. She had walked into this marriage carrying the fear of being viewed as an outsider, an obligation, a burden. But at that moment, standing in the quiet glow of the event hall lights, she felt something shift. Not because Ethan defended her publicly, but because he meant every word. The event continued, and for the rest of the evening Ethan stayed close, speaking to her with a level of openness she had not seen before. When the night finally ended and they returned to the estate, Ethan stopped in the foyer, turning his chair slightly so he could face her. "Ava," he said softly, "I know this marriage began as a contract. I know you did not choose this because you wanted it." He paused, searching for the right words. "But you have brought stability to my life in ways I did not anticipate. You have shown dignity, strength, and patience. I want you to know that I do not see you as an arrangement. I see you as a partner." Ava felt her breath catch. "Ethan." He held her gaze, unguarded for the first time. "If you are willing, I would like for us to redefine what this marriage means. Not out of obligation, not out of strategy, but because I believe you deserve a life built on more than survival. and I want to build that with you. Silence wrapped around them, gentle and full. Ava stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. I would like that too. Ethan exhaled, a slow, quiet breath that sounded almost like relief. The contract had brought them together. Circumstance had forced their hands. But choice, real choice, was what carried them forward. In the grand foyer of the Hale estate, under soft lights and a still night sky, a new chapter began. Not fake. Not strategic, just real.